There's two chairs by Jeffrey. Here we are, okay.
County, oh, sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
didn't give you the signal.
The big eyebrow.
Okay, give me 1 second here. I gotta get recording started.
Welcome, everyone. It's Tuesday, March 5th, Pickens County Planning and Zoning regular meeting. Present, we have Jasmine and Jeffrey and Doug. And we are going to start with, is there any commissioner comments? Staff comments? Yep.
First, we wanted to introduce Franco,
Hello.
who's here today, Palumbo. Planner with us, been with us for how many months now?
About six,
About six.
Sure.
yeah, since September.
Anyway, just his first time appearing for you, so we thought it might be nice to actually introduce him before we have him like trot out his application in front of you. So this is Franco. And then other things are just more on the scheduling front. Question for you is if you would be available April 23rd at 4 o'clock for a joint meeting with the BOCC for an update on the code implementation project. You don't necessarily have to answer now. I'll send you out an email, but just wanted to kind of plant that seed. Doug's already shaking his head. Okay, you're out. That's legit.
4 o'clock?
Yeah. So I'll, run that, through the crew and see if we can make that date work with a quorum at least. And just to let you know, kind of moving forward as this whole project is still moving forward and we're gonna look to get back to our cadence of planning commission meetings, where the first meeting of the month will be a caseload meeting, and the second will be more long range, and where we'll try and be using your time to bring issues, topics, discussion, whatever it might be related to the code project, as well as Ellen and Hannah Hunt are still working on some master plans and, other things. So there's gonna be a little swap with that in the next couple of months, because I know we had scheduled a caseload item in May on the second meeting, but it looks like we'll be able to use the first meeting for some follow-up with you. So again, we're just gonna try and plan for monthly that will have caseload the first meeting and then other long-range stuff for you the second meeting of the month. So again, I'll send an update when I ask about the 23rd on sort of upcoming meetings and what we have on agendas for you, so we can, obviously, it's always helpful for us to know upfront when you're not gonna be available for certain meetings, so. But I think that was it.
On that issue, real quick, I ran into John McBride, and he wasn't aware of the ongoing, code, the group that was involved in whatever our group is called. And I don't know whether he missed it or whatever, but he said he'd like to be involved. So if we can, or whatever it is.
When by April, we'll like start to be,
Okay, so it hasn't really started.
it hasn't really started, no, in terms of the public input. Yeah, we're gonna be, being able to, trot out a new website and talk to you about how we're gonna be doing public outreach and kind of start to have that putting out to the public, like, here are all the things that are gonna start happening. You what?
He was a committee member, right?
Oh, John O. I'm thinking, in my head, I was thinking John Senior when you said
John
that,
O
but,
was a committee-
so no, he has not missed anything.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. And actually, like that joint meeting, our plan would be to invite the growth committee members to come hear the update as well at that same time.
Okay.
Again, with them, they're gonna be going forward sort of more, just keeping them in the loop
Right.
and touching in periodically with them, but that'll all be part of what kind of gets trotted out in April.
Great.
But no, good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's it.
All right, thanks again. Tonight, public hearing, Pickens County, AABC Integrated Microgrid Project Location and Extent Review. We'll just start with the staff presentation.
Okay. Howdy, everyone. Okay. Thanks, Zach. I'm talking about the location extent review for the AABC integrated microgrid. We got the applicant, GR Fielding, sitting right next to me. I'll probably run through the application, the summary, and then anything kind of nitty gritty regarding what is this, he'll explain. Cause I didn't really know, at the beginning either. So this just kind of explains the process, for location extent, calls out the code sections 23030 H9. And the applicable master plans that we're gonna be looking at is the west of Maroon Creek Master Plan and the Aspen Area Community Plan. Just kind of a heads up on the Aspen Area Community Plan, it's not as applicable as what I found regarding this location extent review. And what staff has come up with was that this is a very sustainable and renewable energy resource. So we'll kind of delve into that a little bit more, but we're gonna definitely delve into the Western Maroon Creek Master Plan more than anything. Location extent, again, here's the code section. And again, we're gonna be probably looking at 9A regarding the conformance to the applicable county comprehensive plan or master plan. So just a quick overview of what is the integrated clean energy microgrid over at the AABC. I'm gonna be using the acronym BESS quite a bit, which is Battery Energy Storage System. Again, GR is gonna kind of go into that a little bit more, but essentially what this system does is allows for energy storage for later use. So you can store energy within the battery. It acts as a energy backup. It could mitigate intermittent nature of renewable power by storage. So the example that I have is solar power. Can't use that at night, but with the battery, you can. Creates flexibility as well, enabling facilities to disconnect from the main grid. So if there is a surge in need, these battery storages could provide an additional energy to the grid. And then it could also work as an island itself. The facilities, the critical facilities that are around where this BESS system is proposed can be supplied energy by these storage systems. Again, this BESS is going to be it's going to be run off of a lot of the clean energy solutions that the county already has provided. And one of those things in this application is the solar PV over on the Public Works lot. And then it's also scalable as well. So, you could always expand the system, growing it over time as you kind of gain more natural resources for energy. And then it kind of talks about what a microgrid is. It's a little quote from the Department of Energy that is there for you. And then that exhibit is just that battery system that is being proposed. And you'll see a lot of these within this presentation as well. These are the two parcels I'll be talking about. We have the airport parcel, and then we have the Public Works parcel. These are just kind of the informations about them. 20 acres, 5.8 acres for the Public Works parcel. These are the locations that we'll be talking about for the subject properties. Airport parcel, as you can see, it kind of runs all the way along Highway 82. It's non-contiguous. There is a little bit of a break in that parcel. And then you have the Public Works parcel, which is in that orange area. That's going to be the location for where the solar carport system is proposed. And then a little bit looking at it closer, this is where the BESS system is proposed in the blue, and then the orange is where the carport solar is proposed on the Public Works lot. So project summary, on the airport parcel, which involves that BESS system, It's gonna involve for the implementation, earth moving, grading, clearing, grubbing of the native vegetation over there. There will be a small access road just to gain access to the facility, whether it be for fire or for engineering purposes. There will be several concrete pads, such as similar in that exhibit on the slide. The systems will be battery systems contained within those metal containers that you see on that exhibit as well. There is a perimeter fence that will be surrounding the facility. The utilities coming from the containers will be trenched. And then there's an HCE, so Holy Cross Energy, is that correct? Holy Cross Energy transformer on the other side of Animal Shelter Road, and that'll be trenched underneath that road. There'll be a road cut, and then that'll be connected to that transformer on the other side. So this whole system will be tied into that, to the existing grid, and that's where we get that integrated microgrid, nomenclature. And then revegetation as well. So once this is all in place, there is some proposed revegetation, and it will be native revegetation is what we're proposing as well. So here's a project summary, again, of the BESS airport parcel. It's gonna be done in phases. So the first phase for this area is to do the access road, do the grading, get the perimeter fence up. And then there will be the one in blue will be the first, one of those storage containers that will be implemented, put on there. And then in later phases, there'll be a second and third BESS system placed on the site. Let's continue. We go to the next one. Okay. And then for the Public Works lot, on that site is the carport solar panels over the existing parking area. There's no changes to the access on the site. Everything's gonna be coming in and out the same way. And the solar is gonna be covering the existing parking spaces. So there's gonna be no reduction in parking spaces at the Public Works site. And the system that is proposed for the carport will be tied into the microgrid and the BESS as well. And so this installation will approximately double the existing solar at the Pickens County Public Works lot facility. And then in this exhibit shows the approximate location of where those carport solar panels will be going. I think the top height will be around 12 feet. And then it's gonna be slanted for, shedding of snow and moisture. And then I believe the lower portion will be 9 feet. So now we're gonna get into staff analysis. And again, with a lot of the West Maroon Creek plan being the main plan that's focused on this node, this area, that's where staff has done the majority of their analysis with. And I'll gonna run through the main points within that master plan. So in this master plan, the airport parcel, that 20-acre parcel was specifically called out, and what the I don't know who in 2013 kind of came up with this master plan, but what they envisioned and what has been described for that parcel is for it to maintain an open view plane, no visual breaks, keep that dense development over by that node and have it support the airport's functions. So in the next slide, when we look at the future land use map, it is designated as airport. But what staff has come up with was, the density of this development, the BESS, is in a very, I'd say dense area. The parcel itself is around 20 acres. And the development is around 0.56 acres, so that's less than 3% of the whole site. So what staff feels is it's not gonna be taking away from the goals that this parcel has been described for. And again, something that this was born out of, prior to the 2013 master plan was, in 2018, we had the Lake Christine fire. And during that time, the critical infrastructure nearly got cut off from the electrical support that Holy Cross serves for these critical, areas. And so this kind of came out with, maybe we need to designate this area, for additional support, additional backup to our critical infrastructure facilities. So yeah. Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything else on this slide. So in this slide, the future land use map, I also call it the FLUM and land use designations. So the two, parcel and lot, two properties. The airport parcel is dedicated as an airport use, intended to support the airport, infrastructure. And then the public works lot is designated on the FLUM for public and institutional, land use category. What staff feels is that the airport parcel, with the BESS system being there, it will support the airport and function, for those critical times when there is no energy or there needs to be energy, supplied to the, airport. And then the public works lot having the, solar canopy or carport that is, aligns with the functions and uses with the, land use category. And I just wanted to put this slide in as well, just showing roughly. It's kind of tough, but maybe I could use my cursor, yeah. This is about where the BESS system would be. And over here, I think it's over here is the carport facility. And this map is straight out of the, WAMP, or the West of Maroon, master plan. And this just shows the line of the UGB and then shows the expansion. I think this was in 2004 when the expansion of the UGB was. And this little guy right here is that beautiful, Aspen snow dump that we have. So going into the design and landscaping guidelines for the WAMP. This photo is taken of that BESS, system. You can see the, proposed site. You can see the, Aspen snow dump kind of crawling up on in the background. Again, the area about right here where this big boulder is and this service, berry bushes, that's the approximate location for where the BESS is proposed. With it being in such a small area, again, it's not gonna, staff believes that's not gonna affect the, overall use of that parcel. No ridge lines are gonna be obstructed, because I believe the maximum height of the structure is gonna be under 9.5 feet. The WAMP does say that, whenever you can, to bury, the facilities. According to GR and his team, those facilities are not able to be buried underground. Utilities will be buried underground and trenched to connect to the Holy Cross, transformer. There is gonna be, no man-made landforms to conceal the structure or site. Only grading for the structure and the facility is going to be completed. And the proposed setbacks have been maintained per the WAMP. So the WAMP requires, especially in the airport designated areas, to maintain at least 100-foot setback from the right of way. The fence will be less than that. I believe it's 92 feet. But the facilities themselves will be back from that, over the 100-foot setback from the right of way. And the landscaping, some items that staff recommended in the attached resolution was that the landscaping, so we got that big service berry bush over there, and that is unfortunately the site of where the BSS is proposed to be. So what staff has recommended is at least 5 native trees or bushes be planted within that vicinity for that revegetation process. That the containers that are housing these BSS are, not bright white, that was in the application packet. But more of a earth tone material to conceal and mitigate the scene, the distraction, I guess, in the scenery. And then there's also that big boulder over there where the system is proposed, and staff also felt like that boulder should be saved and used again as part of the screening for between the right of way and the facility itself. And again, analyzing the ABC activity node design and landscaping guidelines over at the Public Works facility and BSS system. The building height limits within the airport master plan section of the WAMP is that buildings should be less than 15 feet in height when they are a flat roof, and this structure in that attached image is proposed to only be 9.5 feet. So that checks that box. The setbacks, again, 100 feet from right of way. The structure is going to be greater than that, so staff is okay with the location of that. The roof lines, it does say that the roof lines have to be some sort of undulation, but staff feels that more means to the AABC, the commercial area. And this is just outside of that node, and felt like that was a okay to have these structures be as such. And then again, the landscaping, staff feels that any of the work that is done around the BSS and the BSS should be mitigated so that revegetation of natural grasses and bushes should be in place, and additional trees for screening as well. And then just some referral comments, like the last slide. Zoning planner said that we should have a glare study. And that aligned again with the Aspen and Pickens County Airport. So I believe GR is going to be working on some sort of glare study. I know the Pickens and County Airport are going to be Pickens County Airport was looking for some, I forget what they're exactly called, but yeah, the FAA forms and that's all within the resolution as well. So that's all in there and tied in with all those comments. And I know RAFTA is a major stakeholder in this project, so they're all on board, and same with the city of Aspen is all on board with this project as well, because it's only going to create additional redundancy to the grid, and especially for these critical infrastructures as well. So I think with that, staff recommends Planning and Zoning Commission find that the location and extent review for the Pickens County AABC integrated microgrid is in conformance with the objectives of the West of Maroon Creek Master Plan and Aspen Area Community Plan, subject to the draft resolution. And don't know if you have any questions or if you just go into GR's presentation, whatever you guys would like.
Any questions right now?
I can ask mine,
Yeah.
hi, sorry, I'd like.
Hi.
Are there any other uses permitted, like, is it gonna be really strict as far as like only battery storage, or can you do anything you want with these containers and put other things in them besides batteries, like servers or, yeah.
And I
These
know-
containers
yeah.
are great at hiding things, so anything could go in there, what else could go in there, like cell phone towers, what else is? Does that make sense? Is
Mhm.
there any use restriction on this? Or is it battery only? Like,
If I was to be corrected, let me know. I thought that these these are like pretty much roll off the shelf, and install. So I don't believe there's anything that's tied into, I'm sure there's computers that talk to it, GR probably.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, if I may? Are you asking like, hey, if we allow containers like this, is there other uses that are going to be put in? Or in this specific project, what is in the container?
well, I guess you could answer both of those questions. It's going to be a land use approval of these storage containers being there. And then henceforth, how do we know that anything other than batteries goes in there? And is that common, like, for example, data storage for like Google's and Amazon use that these exact same sort of boxes around the United States, and they also use boxes like this to, you know, beam 5G. So what else goes in there?
So, I can answer for this project first. And so the battery energy storage system, BESS or BESS, that are gonna be contained here have, what's called SCADA. So that's a computer system that helps control the batteries. They'll have the actual battery cells. It has a firefighting component within inside of that. And then attached to that is a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit that keeps the batteries themselves at a functioning temperature. We have no use right now for other or commercial uses on this project. It is a government-sponsored project for resiliency and green energy. And so right now we have no plans to have things like commercial 5G cell service. All of the communications for this project are going to be handled via a fiber optic network that will be managed by Holy Cross Energy.
Maybe since you're answering my questions, I should let you go on with your presentation, then I'll ask my other questions. I don't want to break the flow of good information. Thank you.
Franco, can you stop presenting and I'll put mine on. Good. Thank you. So for those that don't know me, I'm GR Fielding. I'm the construction and asset director for Pickens County. I've been here for a little over 17 years. Most of that time was spent as the county engineer working in public works, mostly in road and bridge, but also in other project delivery. Last time I sat before you was for a location and extent for the existing solar array that is on top of the public works facility that'll be partially utilized for this project as well. I also have Michael Port here in support. He is our climate action analyst, and in the future, a couple years from now, he's going to be kind of the climate action setup guy, and I and my department will be the execution of that for assets within the county. The first graphic that we have here depicts the RAFTA bus barn, the Pickens County Public Works Facility, and the terminal at the airport. And those are going to be three of the primary public buildings or publicly functioning buildings that'll be serviced by the microgrid. Franco did a great job getting us through a lot of the minutia and actually more of the detail that I was anticipating. So this might go pretty quick. The vision is to create a regionally resilient, 100% clean energy system. And so, he had a definition of what a microgrid is, and so microgrid is just a smaller version of grid. So what do you have? You have distribution, you have users, and you have generation. And so any facility that really has a generator on site and an automatic transfer switch that turns itself off is technically a microgrid, but this one's gonna be integrated. And what integrated means is it's gonna use the existing grid that is in the ground and in the air right now, the Holy Crosses, and add assets that the county will own to function. Why are we doing this? As was stated earlier, we had the Lake Christine fire in 2018, and if you remember, it was during July 4th. I don't know how many people were in town July 4th that week, but our estimates have always been that we have between 40 and 50,000 people in town in the Upper Valley during our busiest weeks. And so as a government, that gave us a little bit of a scare of being able to communicate, evacuate if we needed to, and how to respond to that. And so between the airport, the RAFTA facility, and the public works facility all being very operational in nature, it made sense to have those off and build some resiliency around those. So again, the WHO is the Aspen-Picken County Airport, RAFTA, and their Aspen Maintenance Facility, the Picken County Public Works Facility, and Holy Cross Energy. Holy Cross has been a wonderful partner in the project. They're gonna actually be operating the system from their building down in Glenwood with their engineers. We are supplying a lot of the capital and are gonna own some of the assets that happen, and everything within that yard is gonna end up being owned by Picken County. After the lake, actually, I'm gonna back up for a second. Those two photos are from the Lake Christine fire. The upper photo is of the power distribution that comes to the Upper Valley. That's how close we were to losing all of our potential energy delivery to the Upper Valley. We would have been really cut off if that were to have burned another few of the high tension lines. After that, there were a succession of feasibility studies completed. The first one was done through RMI. I think Jeffrey, you might know a little something about that one. From that was born another follow-up and a process that brought together Picken County, Holy Cross, and a few of these other partners to follow that feasibility up with a little bit more work. That work identified two different projects. Geothermal heating district and a microgrid. After living with this microgrid as its project manager for the last few years, I'm still amazed that it is the least complex out of those sets of projects, but it is. The feasibility went through a pretty extensive site assessment, looking at all of the energy usage in the facilities that were identified. Evaluation of potential conservation measures for each of those facilities. And that really established an energy box for each of those facilities. Based on those energy boxes, that's how we get to develop a design for a project like this. Develop an integrated clean energy system. So part of the feasibility study opined on how to create and implement a microgrid. As with most projects, we have diverged slightly from that, but it's sometimes also amazing some of the details that they put in there. And you're like, oh, wow, we did go with that after some kind of independent review. And finally, the economic ownership and administrative framework is something that we are working to implement right now. It's one of the reasons that makes this project very, very innovative is that we're going to have multiple asset owners within one project. So we had to come up with an operating agreement, and we're going to start getting signatures on that proposed agreement in the next week. We have gone over a few times of what an integrated microgrid system is. This system eventually will have 3 separate yards that have battery containers. Right now, we know where the first one is going. It's going to be size large enough that it can run all 3 facilities. And then, as with anything that is resiliency oriented, you want to get some redundancy in the system as well. And so those will be future phases. What we are proposing to build, hopefully this summer, will be the yard where the batteries are contained and all of the equipment, all of the appurtenances there too, which are switchgear and transformers and a lot of other technical and computer equipment that are housed in other boxes that allow the microgrid to operate. So that's a lot on the resiliency. The other piece of this is it allows for more clean energy to be utilized, and we hit on that a little bit earlier. But as part of this project, what we will be able to do in the future as well is participate in the Power Plus program with Holy Cross. And if you've heard of the Power Plus program, it was generated so that they could get things like Tesla solar walls installed in people's houses to create some distributed assets within their network. This would be a very, very similar implementation, but on just a completely different scale, like a couple orders of magnitude larger. The application that you have really looks at this phase one. So all of the infrastructure, switch gears, reclosers, fiber optic communication lines, and transformers. Equipment, microgrid controllers, relays, communication equipment, and the battery. And then 2 shelf projects. The one that we're clearing today, hopefully, is the Pickens County Public Works solar expansion. This phase of the design will pay for a 30% design of that solar facility. When we get funding, we will do the rest of design. We don't want to go through the rest of design now and paint ourselves into a dated architecture. A lot of the project will happen on the existing grid. And so I opine that 99% of people would have no idea that when they swap out a lot of the equipment that is on the Holy Cross grid, it'll look exactly the same. But that is not part of necessarily the review. It's just maybe a little bit of context of how this thing will operate. Here's a site plan, and I think this is the same thing that was up earlier, just to show over top of the parking at the Public Works facility will go additional solar panels. The math is correct. This will be approximately double the solar capacity on site for Public Works with an additional 100 kW, and that's an ish number. On the roofs right now is 104 kW of solar. Some other examples, if you ever go up to the mountain bike or hiking trails north of Rifle, you may drive past their police station. This is a solar canopy that they installed there. We would anticipate that we'll probably end up with something that's similar to that or this, where we have just a cantilever thing that goes into the ground, either adjacent to or through the existing impervious surface. We would probably have a little bit more of a slope than this so that it actually does shed snow during the winter a little bit better than our existing solar at Public Works. And so that's kind of a next phase that for installation, but because the grant funding happens very quickly in this space, we'd want to get this phase cleared as well. The best yard this is the site plan here. This coincides with what you saw earlier. The box that's here is actually will be a few boxes, and we're going to move a couple of these things. This transformer down here is approximately where we'll connect to the existing grid, and that's how the energy will be distributed into that. Driving up Valley, we were trying to figure out the best way to display this, and it's really difficult, but we made them green in this one. This is approximately where the BESS will sit. And it won't break your beautiful view of Aspen Mountain as you round the bow out of the runway. The boxes as delivered will look similar to this. I will apologize that I realized earlier today that the measurements on the box are off, that 23.8 should actually show half of a box, not a full box. It is bifurcated here, but that's how the system will look once it's put on its foundation.
It's 46 feet long, 47 feet long.
Yeah, so each one of so there's gonna be 3 rows and each one will be, just on the 47 change. So let's just call it 50, because there's probably gonna be some equipment hanging off of it. For this project, we did a lot of research into different technologies that are available. Vanadium flow, iron air, lead acid, stored thermal. We did end up with lithium ion because it is literally the only thing that you can actually buy right now. Operations of a microgrid. We're hopeful that we never have to actually engage this microgrid, right? Because that means that we're in a black sky event, and the black sky event means that the power is down, and it's not usually for a good reason. In larger islands, so when you talk about a microgrid forming, on the grid, you will islands. And our larger island will reach out to the 5 megawatt PV array in between the site and Moody Creek. That's done on the existing grid with a number of switches and reclosers that Holy Cross will operate. If say the incident were to happen during the day and then we transition into night, we no longer have the asset of the larger solar array. We were able to operate all 3 of those facilities with the battery itself. At full load is only about 2 hours worth of storage that we'll start off with. And then as we add those other batteries, that will increase the amount of time that we're able to operate. That being said, we also have a lot of things operationally that we can do. And most of the time, unless it's a very bad incident, we're not operating the airport in the middle of the night. And we can pare down public works in the Raft the bus barn. So we can get a lot of hours out of that. Blue Sky Operations is our day-to-day. It's the Power Plus will negotiate a contract with Holy Cross in the future for access to the battery system. The system does need to be charged and depleted. And so it's a kind of a win-win for everyone. They'll be able to do what they call demand response on their grid at large with that power that is stored on the battery. And Holy Cross is again, they've been an amazing project partner for this. They have dedicated most of their engineering staff to weekly meetings to assist in the design and execution. And they have agreed to be the operator of the system. And then this is just one of my favorite photos that we got of the area when they flew a drone when the airport was closed. And we don't get to do that a lot. So we try to make good use of the airport closures on a lot of different fronts. But this drone was parked over about where the snow mound of the Aspen snow pile is sitting right now. And here's the other side. And here's that serviceberry bush that we were using as a landmark earlier. A funny thing, yes, we'll try to use the boulder to screen. I don't know if the contractor that we're hiring is gonna have a big enough piece of equipment, but luckily we have Public Works next door, so I might be able to call in a favor from my old colleagues. I think that boulder probably got to where it is because they had to excavate to build the berm for the snow dump. And so I'm guessing it got placed on top of the berm as a joke and it rolled to where it is.
Sorry, so all we're looking at.
Yeah.
Can you kind of outline with your cursor the area that we're talking about?
Sure, it'll extend into this area, and then it's basically a rectangle into Animal Shelter Road right here.
Okay.
And as stated before, yeah, I think the math's something like a little over half acre. So that's the project in a nutshell. It's been priority of BOCC for the last several years. They've put a substantial amount of resources into the project. And it's been really exciting for myself to learn a bunch of new industries and try to practice some project delivery.
Did you have numbers on the next slide?
That wasn't for this audience, but I can share, but they're dated, so they're not right. But all in right now, we're looking at about a $5 million project.
For 1 hour of redundancy?
It's gonna be a lot more than that. It's gonna be at full, so it's a 1.5 megawatt architecture. So if you were to turn everything on at the same time, and then probably 20% for like the factor of safety that we program in, we get 2 hours right now. Because it'll be about, the first batteries will be 3 megawatt hours. Again, I think we'll get a lot more out of that. We're also building the yard to house 3 sets of those batteries. So that automatically goes up to 6 hours there. Eventually, there will be other projects before this council to expand that network even further on the RAFTA property and perhaps on the airport. But as the airport goes through their ALP, that'll be something that they identify space for. And RAFTA will get to that when it becomes convenient for them with their funding and their climate action plan that they have.
Awesome.
I have some, but.
Thanks, GR. Any questions for GR?
Yeah, I mean, I understand lithium is the only thing available right now, but I'm pretty familiar with the fact it's highly flammable. So what do you do if one of these catches fire, and how long will it burn for? How do you put it out?
Sure. So I'm not gonna pretend to be a fire mitigation expert, but I have done a bunch of research in this area recently. Lithium ion batteries have a bit of a couple different problems, one of which is PR, and one of which is actual QA/QC. The containers that we have will have racks of batteries. They're gonna be a lithium iron phosphate chemistry. The box also has its own firefighting system within it. We have talked to the Aspen Fire District about the project. They're aware of it. The other thing that happens inside of these is the reason that lithium catches on fire, and my chemistry isn't perfect on this, but it basically is a thermal runaway from an exothermic reaction, chemical reaction. And from that, it will catch the things next to it on fire. In a system that's this sophisticated, they have sensors to turn off the cells if they sense any sort of thermal runaway. And once it shuts down those cells, we will have them replaced under warranty from the manufacturer for X number of years. And that's going to be part of the service contract on this. So on these larger containers and the larger batteries, I am not aware of any sort of significant issues for the fire. A lot of the fires that I know of tend to happen on things like e-bikes that have kind of a very generic and not nearly as sophisticated an infrastructure as this will have.
Okay. I just got done with comments on a client of mine's underground parking garage, and the Salt Fire Protection District specifically said no electric car charging stations in the underground parking garage because it's too dangerous to have several electric vehicles parked together underground because the fire would be impossible to put out. So different fire resource comment districts are giving different advice than that. Aspen Fire Protection aware of it and just not commenting. If they think it's maybe a cluster of flammable things that they should put like an extra hydrant in for, or is it, or did they give you a green light and say this is safe?
I think that they'll have another crack at any sort of comments and requests through permitting. I believe that there'll be probably a referral in the permits. That being said, in some of our initial conversations, after we talked about the firefighting system that's contained inside the box, that is like they have 2 different QL listings for those types of firefighting systems. They also They also commented on the fact that, you know, they've done things like buy, blankets, for cars. And that if they have concerns, we can certainly address them with whatever sort of, technologies emergent, whether it's a blanket or some other furtherance of, detail in the firefighting system that's inside the container.
Sounds pretty high tech. It's just, I guess we ran into this issue in a different application where the fire protection stuff comes later, and so we can't address safety now. Like it comes at the building permit stage and not now. That's my question, yeah.
I mean, you can certainly raise the concerns. Obviously, we're not the technical experts, you know, everything that the fire department's gonna have to, you know, review and sign off. I guess I don't even know.
And that happens later in the process.
That's I guess at permit, I mean, I don't know in terms of kind of the permitting, I assume, yeah. If it's a normal building permit for a container with this equipment in it, presumably then the fire department is reviewing and signing off on that.
And they have to do that under the same rules as, you know, a non-government authority, non-government.
They have an adopted fire code. I mean, that's what they're reviewing about it.
Jeffrey?
Are you good?
Yeah, I had another question. So technology changes a lot, right? What's the rule that every year everything gets a half of like 50% smaller than the year before, and you can store more power in the same size space year over year, technology gets better. So how do you envision this site evolving as technology changes?
It's a very, very good question. Unfortunately, that space for energy storage isn't evolving as fast as a lot of the articles that you'll read, state. Every year there's, hey, this is the next battery and it's gonna be this size. Lithium is used because of its placement on the periodic table. I believe it's element 3, and so it's got the, available electrons, the same as sodium, which takes up a lot more space. And so a lot of the next things actually might get bigger before they get smaller in some of the energy storage. There are some solid state type of things that I'm trying to track. But all of those technologies come with their own slew of other issues. I think this space in the next few years will look like it'll have some of the same types of containers. They've been market ready for a decade, and their energy density is what it is from just chemistry. They're changing the chemistry slightly from year to year based on the availability of other elements. So I would think that they would look like the expansion of this would look very similar to this first phase with the first 2 containers, with the next 4 looking substantially the same. If we can get something that's more energy dense, that's awesome. It'll get us more hours of operation. But really, I think the overall look and feel of it will be pretty similar.
And Chelsea, I just want to note that Franco did reach out to Aspen Fire to see if there are any specific comments about emergency access. Addressing those types of questions, and we just didn't get a response.
I could keep on bugging them too and pass those comments along.
Yeah, I looked for response comments and there were very, very few.
Yeah.
Feedback, because you just send it to like the local government neighbors, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would be curious, it's gotta have some sort of thought on the fact that there's gonna be highly flammable material right there in a concentrated area. Yeah.
So maybe we require as part of the resolution, there is an NFPA guide, which is NFPA
Thank you.
855.
I don't remember if this is 855.
Standard for installation of stationary energy storage systems.
Yeah,
And so we've done that in other approvals where
Okay.
we've said, you know, used a wonderful helping verb like you should. Submit, we did it when we added, temporary workforce housing for recreational vehicles. We used NFPA as the way to cover ourselves in terms of the approval.
Yeah.
So it might be, I don't own this one, I apologize, I own the recreational vehicle, but not the energy storage one. Do you have a couple of minutes for a long question or two? So, sorry, and we'll come back to technology, I promise we can talk batteries all night. So Franco, I guess the first question is, we didn't do a FONSI on this and why? It sort of goes back to the severity of, we're installing large scale battery storage next to an airport. We did a FONSI for the ABC for the housing while I was in.
Do you want to respond to that, or it's chapter 12 is not, it's under, it's chapter 12, which is not applicable because it's a county project.
Yeah.
The county.
Oh, but even though
exempt
the
from-
district wasn't exempt from it?
Correct. The county,
county
the
is.
county is the only entity that is exempt
So then.
from chapter 12.
Then the follow-up question, of course, is, I can't call it BESS, it's just not acronyms. Is a microgrid an applicable use underneath the table for public?
And that's,
So
yeah,
your existing zoning doesn't appear to support this use. Question one, and then question two is, the WOMP that we really should be looking at this evening specifically states that parcel should continue to function as a rural undeveloped transition area. And I appreciate the math comment of it's a half acre after 20, but is the half acre after your first phase, your second phase, your third phase? We're slowly eating up that undeveloped parcel that, again, our purview is really just you meet or not meet the WOMP criteria. So I'm worried that you're trying to do something that's not zoned for that, and then you're violating, you're going against the wishes of the WOMP that's literally just 10 years old. So, sorry, first question for you.
I guess this is what staff opinion is. These are, of course, land use categories and, again,
But we have a table, Franco, and
Yeah.
the table says here's the permitted use, and we can put solar arrays or battery.
You want me to jump in on
Yeah, yeah.
the use table?
Yeah.
The short version of why we do L and E
Yeah.
for the districts and the
Yeah.
county is that zoning is out the window.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's zoned public or
So it's just
Or
one. It's just
residential,
one. All right, that's
or-
fine.
anything,
Yeah.
right? That's how we
All
always
right,
have to think
so-
about it, because we kind of do what you do. We're like,
Yeah.
but wait, like, this is what we do. We do like all these things, and then we're like, no, we don't do any of that here. So we're not bound by, oh, this zone district only allows these uses or whatever. So that piece of your, I guess.
I got it. That's question one. There were two
Is-
parts.
I'll jump on that one. and
Yeah, yeah.
I'll let
Nice.
Franco
Line.
respond more on the WOMP piece.
So you wouldn't reason out, you're just,
No,
you're
we don't
saying
have to rezone
L and
it.
E, you're subject to the WOMP. I'm saying the WOMP is 10 years old, not 30, like we've seen some others.
Mhm.
We use the WOMP extensively for the density argument with 40 housing. So I'm coming back to the WOMP, and I don't think we've addressed that yet.
okay, so with the WOMP in the BESS system, I said system, but the BESS being on that airport parcel was called out on the WOMP. And again, what staff and I found was that between now and 2013, the Lake Christine fires happened. And that's, I know, and that's something that we couldn't predict. And so this was our solution and the applicant's solution to, finding a way to, set up a system so that we do have a backup for these facilities. And I know, you're saying that about the chiseling away of this beautiful 20-acre parcel along Highway 82. This is the first time we've, I believe, touched it, since that parcel was subdivided or even prior to subdivision. I have it in some record over 20-something years ago. So to ask, we're putting in a half acre for a redundancy for critical infrastructure. I think there is some leniency or some understanding that maybe this is a little bit of a divergence from the WOMP, but that's still, supplying the infrastructure and the utilities and the facilities that are called out within the WOMP that are needed to be continually supplied.
So
And I would also just add to what Franco
Yeah.
described, is that also found in the WOMP is the intention of locating development activities within the urban growth boundary. And so we're sort of stuck in a tricky situation where there's a comment about the airport parcel, but then there's also a comment about locating development in the urban growth boundary. And in this case, the development that's been reviewed tonight is all located in the urban growth boundary. And that was the finding that we made for compliance with the plan.
It seems, I mean, to me, this is sort of a Salt Vista without housing. It's a microgrid for parking, but not for people. And so the follow-up question, sorry, the Salt Vista is a Down Valley project. But it was one of the first, and I apologize, I did serve on the RMI board that looked at microgrids probably 4 or 5 years ago, that was exploring what are the options. And so the joy of the Salt Vista is it's housing batteries and solar. The disappointment here is that it's adding no density, no public services. And honestly, we're missing the most valuable part of the ABC, which is the telecommunication center. So if this was really a Lake Christine play, the 911 center is 500, feet from this, and yet we're doing a public works building. So it's somewhat, I don't want to, I'm away from the WOMP, but to say this is a Lake Christine play, but you're not lighting up the 911 services that are sitting 500 feet from this seems somewhat disingenuous. So 2 final questions. A 7-foot fence doesn't sound either wildfire or wildlife friendly. So I'm assuming that's the goal. Is it a security fence?
Security fence.
So it's going to be out of metal?
I believe it's proposed as chain link. Do you have any recommendation or?
Don't fence things?
Yeah,
Wow, I mean, based on what Holy Cross has dealt with in the past and having the vandalism, like I assume they're gonna demand is, they have to protect that infrastructure. It's sort of but yeah, wildlife fencing would be great, but I feel like I don't know what that wildlife corridor looks like or, what the flow through there is, but.
And my final question, I guess, is if we're replanting next to something that is flammable, can we actually make them fire resistant? There actually is something called fire resistant vegetation, and you can use the Colorado State Forest Service guide for that. So we would love if you left the room and it was a better proposal than when you walked in. And CSFS does publish a list. It's not the best, meaning someone in the county should also say, is it native and fire resistant? As opposed to we just put, conifers there to screen. Right.
Mhm.
Those are my comments, but I'm at the personal level disappointed you're not including, if this really was a BCP, if you will, or DER, whatever you want to call it, that we're not including emergency response. That's, 500 feet from the facility. So, and I would put that above public works, sorry.
Want to translate your acronyms for us?
So BCP is business continuity plan, and DER is, distributed,
Energy resource.
thank you, which was what I would use before BESS, I've never heard of. But to me, the argument was, we're doing this because of Lake Christine. If you're doing it because of Lake Christine, then, and again, sorry, GR knows that the genesis of this conversation was, we really want the hospital, the schools, and emergency services. We wanted DER for that. That was the first conversation. So this is a really weird derivation of that conversation in terms of the services that are supported by the system. Is that a fair summary?
Sure.
You can,
I have a little bit of a different take, but I don't
Yeah.
think either one of them would necessarily be wrong. I look at that continuity of operation and look at some of the threats that we have and we have responded to, and the staff that has responded to it in the past. And I'm probably a little bit biased, as I lived out of the public works facility almost every day for 15 years. But that was one of the operational hubs of the county, particularly during any sort of emergent issue. It's used by not just public works staff, but it's also where any let's see, Aspen Fire, all of their vehicles are serviced out of that facility. Aspen Airport, all of their emergent response vehicles are, serviced out of that facility. All of the operators that have helped with some of the other emergencies operate out of that facility, and that's. And CDOT also operates out of that, yard. Thank you, Michael. And so as far as that's concerned, that was one of the reasons why that was identified. I know that the conversation around the 911 center that is, in the North 40, has happened. I wasn't privy to the conversation of why that's in or out, but I also know enough about the grid, and I'm not allowed, like, that is subject to an NDA, that we have to, sign for fully crossing the grid. But I would tell you the complexity of getting there is something. Also, the 911 center is there on a temporary basis and not as a permanent basis. And so putting in a pretty substantial piece of infrastructure to get there, to give it another set of redundancy. I know that they did put a generator in there several years ago, so they do have some backup power. So I agree, like, if it was easy, I think we would have done it. If it was not on a temporary basis, I think we probably would have done it. If it ends up staying there long term, I'm guessing that that's a piece of infrastructure that we'll look at for a future phase. Additionally, there's other structures and facilities that are not that far off. The other thing that we had to consider also is ownership of a lot of those different assets, and getting to something that would include another facility owner adds another layer of complexity to a lot of these. And when we can operate with a little bit of a smoother and pared down operation, it helps develop those ownership agreements. All that said, I don't disagree with some of your concerns.
So, and final question. I'm assuming you're gonna continue to have fossil fuel backup for everything, and there'll be no change with your fossil fuel use, that you'll keep them all in line. There was
Yes.
this is 8 years of history with this board.
Yes.
We've not the telecoms guys, because they come in and they say, hey, we're doing X and we're gonna go fill our propane tank.
Yeah.
In the woods. So I'm assuming you're gonna say the same thing. We're gonna keep all of our fossil fuel and propane tanks right there because we only have an hour in our battery.
Yes, is the short version, but
It's not a knock. It's, again, we
we-
just have the WAMP to work with, so.
Yeah, listen.
This is just a personal criticism.
Yeah, no, and I take that to heart
Yeah.
because, but in all honesty, what we're doing is we're installing something before we have to get to fossil fuels, right? And that's really the crux of this. And we're really honing in on, like, hopefully what's only 0.1% of the time of operations of this thing. Hopefully, I never have to find out whether my microgrid works or not. I mean, we're gonna commission it and we'll find out how it works and when it works. But really, the black sky operations are really hopefully very, very, very minimal. Most of the training that I have in resiliency talks about redundancy in the same breath. And so we want to keep that redundancy for exactly the reasons that you alluded to. And also as just a general matter of course, the good news is that we have, like, at Public Works, there's a diesel generator and a tank that's 10,000 gallons of diesel on site. And then next door at Rapid,
Buy on batteries.
yeah, well, next door, Rapid, I don't think they have two-way directional yet for the batteries in their buses, but they have fossil fuel use. I think they use used oil for one of their generators on site. And the airport has that redundant, which is their dealings with the FAA. So that's on a whole other level. But as we expand this, our storage capacity here, we're literally reducing our reliance on that fossil fuel.
There was, I guess, there was no opportunity to convert the parking into housing and throw the solar on the roof. And I mean, I hate to bring in Joni Mitchell to this meeting, because I know we have to be WAMP only.
Right.
But Joni Mitchell would say, we're paving Paradise to put up a parking lot. We continue to do that.
I think, this is a totally aside from the conversation that's before you, but last year I was the staff. I was on a team where we did some space analysis for the parcel that, the battery will go on. We looked at Public Works and we looked at this whole area. And truth be told, I don't, personally think, that housing is a compatible use in a lot of that area based on, some of the directly adjacent uses. You have a snow dump that operates at night. You have a public works facility that operates from 4 AM to 11 PM. You have, the bus barn, which gets complaints about its nighttime operations as well. So, when we look at that set of land uses, I would say that building some sort of resiliency for the operational nature of the neighborhood is, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks for not making me sign an NDA.
First of all, I had no idea when Jeffrey and Suzanne were talking about the comment. That was like, and I'd like to understand it because I feel like I should. And then my other piece was, there was a picture of this facility with a fence around it, and the fence was offensive to me. And so if there's a way to make the fence not look quite so institutional, criminal, you know, it's like it's around a jail or something, or a penitentiary. You know, that's something that matters to me. I think that adding battery storage is critical, and so I can support that. What the battery needs, you know, that's a little beyond my level of comfort. So those are my comments.
You wanna do fence first and then I'll talk them.
Sure, so fence piece, the fence piece is required by electrical code. And the height is, has to be at least 7 feet, or taller. As from the institutional side, we deleted the barbed wire on the top. We took that out of the project because we were like, yeah, that might be a little bit much, especially for around here. We'll definitely work with, the community development staff in identifying screening and do the best that we can there. As far as the wildlife piece, I don't know enough about the code to understand the wildlife fencing, but we'd actually probably want to keep most larger critters out of this area. It's an electrical yard, at its function, so.
I guess the last one would be, dark sky. Surely there's not gonna be lights on that thing.
We took, a number of the lights off of the project before it got to this point.
Resolutions that are not lit.
So and on the fencing, I guess, maybe somebody will remember, I mean, the fencing that's around the solar farm out there, I mean, I assume it's similar to this.
I walk
and
around
it's-
out there and it's not as offensive as what I saw in the picture, but it might be
Okay.
just because of the scale.
And perspective, or how close you are to it and all those things, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not better to excavate and put it lower because
That starts to get pretty technical pretty quick. So below this yard is an entire grounding system that is below it. Geotechnically, I don't want to go too low here because the boulder that we're gonna have to eventually move came out of this area. You don't, if you've ever been to the Picken County Public Works facility, all of the boulders that created that berm were created on site, and put there because we had nowhere else to put them at the time.
What's a grounding system?
The grounding system is a wire mesh. It's like, it's the third prong on a plug, right? That's the ground for the electrical system. So
That exists underneath the site.
yes, it's just a wire mesh that's, tied into the system so that, it doesn't get struck by lightning and those sorts of things.
like residential type, the foundation, you draw the ground, you put it in the ground. I'm sure it's for overcharged to go into the earth if there's something.
Right.
Makes sense.
And I'm not gonna pretend, my professional engineering license is not in electrical, and I learn that on a weekly basis on my team calls.
Oh, sorry, let me see. Jasmine, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, sir. We keep talking about phases and future phases, and I'm a real big picture with words person to put two and two together, and so I haven't seen like the right picture that explains to me future phases. Are all the future phases within this half acre? Or is it gonna continue to expand into the 20 acre?
So right now, we are really focused on delivering the first sets of energy storage within this half acre. Anything that is expanded upon past that, if it triggers the land use code the same way that this development does, it'll be before this board. We don't have sites for the other two energy storage yards. And I don't know if because of future technology or if we go a different direction with some of our other say geothermal exchange and that is able to supply a different type of power generation. Those future substantially different, but they could also look almost exactly the same. We just don't know yet. All in, this project could be up to $30 million, and that sort of funding is not available for us right now. Big picture, though, yeah, it's up to RAF to decide if and when they want to put something on their property, or actually it's a county parcel, but on their leasehold. And the airport, again, is going through their airport layout plan, so if they elect to do another yard, they can either elect to do it somewhere on or adjacent to the airfield, or come back before you and mirror the site that we're talking about today.
Did explain that question
No,
about zoning? Okay,
Sorry.
that's a good segue into the whole zoning, if they were to come back again, how this whole process works.
So basically, under state statute, if it's a governmental entity, city to county, or districts, the fire districts, there's essentially an immunity to zoning.
You don't have to follow zoning.
Right.
You don't have to follow underlying zoning.
Right. So the process we go through instead is location and extent, and that's called out under state statute as well. So we have that adopted into our code, which is what says we're reviewing this based on consistency with the master plan and not reviewing it under all of the other things you usually see in applications. Activity envelope and site plan and how does the zoning apply and all of those types of things. The additional piece Jeffrey asked about, which was a FONSI, which is a finding of no significant impact, or a permit under areas and activities of state interest. That's our chapter 12 in the land use code. You haven't gotten to enjoy that yet. But that basically is an additional layer that can be applied when an entity is going through location and extent. But when that was written, the board specifically stated that the county is not subject to that process. So for the county's projects, we only do location and extent. We don't do the areas and activities of state interest. But other entities, if the city has a big new water project or something that could have to go through, either a finding of no significant impact or a two-step review, P&Z, BOCC, to get a permit under chapter 12 of the code. That's kind of the short version.
Which is why most of this conversation is health, safety, and doesn't meet the characteristics described in the law. For sure.
And with an L&E review, I mean, obviously it's hard for us to totally step away from our other world of the code. So, I mean, we're always kind of looking at those, what are the things we'd be talking about, not necessarily specific to the zoning tables and that, but I mean, obviously the WAMP talks a lot about scenic impact. So, I mean, that's pretty direct. When we did the WAMP, it's probably one of the few master plans where we were living in the world where we understood that things were subject to L&E and not the code. And so we were very specific about criteria, and we also adopted those criteria into the code as an overlay zone district in the code. So again, there's a lot more detail in the WAMP than we find in most of the other master plan. Like Franco, looking at the Aspen Area Community Plan, there's not much to grab onto. The WAMP actually for this area really does have a lot of, more specific statements for us to review things under.
And the punchline is, so if 3 of the 5 say no to this application, we then have to say to the Board of County Commissioners that the reason we said no is because in the WAMP, it says this parcel should continue to function as a rural undeveloped transition area. And we go back to the BOCC with the reason for saying no to the application. And then the board can say, we say yes.
Exactly.
And that's under the statute as well. That basically, you could say, we find it doesn't comply. And then it kicks back to the entity that proposed it in the first place, in this case, the county, and they are able to say, thank you for your input. But this is still gonna move forward. Same if this was something that the city had brought forward, technically, again, it's your opportunity to comment, to apply the master plan.
That's not, but that's on all the business that comes before us. They can go to the VOCC and they can do something
Well,
different than what we did.
Well, we could say no, as Jeffrey explained, and then state our reasons for saying no. Or we could say yes, that includes some suggestions for revisions to the resolution that kind of align with the health and safety conversation we've been having. For example, if I were to vote yes, I would want like a much more detailed explanation of the fire safety control plan just to verify. I understand there's like gonna be annual checks, but technology changes and I would want there to be a better, stricter fire control plan for that. So that's one example of ways we can modify the resolution for their recommendation. Other than saying no, which we can also do, and sometimes they pay attention to what we say. I've heard.
It's only a recommendation. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not approving it or anything.
Well, and Doug, I would just say that one difference here is that L&E is within the purview of the P&Z. This application, as presented to you, doesn't go on to the BOCC with just your recommendation. It's a little different with the L&E because the county's the applicant as well as the reviewing authority. And again, that's what's making this one a little weird, why it would, in theory, go to the BOCC if you said, we don't like it, it doesn't meet the master plan. The BOCC, as the owner of the property and the proponent of the project, has the opportunity to say, thanks, but here's why this is really important and we're doing it anyway. Different than, say, on a subdivision review where you've made a recommendation of approval or denial, and then that goes up to the BOCC for them to make the final decision. Does that make sense? Just to differentiate. Again, it's a little different here just because the county is the applicant as well.
So, GR, I have a question. With emergency airport lighting, how many hours did you say if everything goes down and we have a dark sky event? Is that just emergency runway lighting, or is that the whole runway, or how's that phase?
The way that the microgrid is going to be implemented and operated is that, essentially, if everything needed to be on, we have about 2 hours with the first set of batteries, and we'll get up to 8 hours eventually. That would operate whatever we need to on the air and land side, on the highway side of the airport. The other parts of the airport are serviced from different areas, but they are also still have legacy fossil fuel generators. So if a situation were to arise where we needed to operate, we can. There are also things that we can do operationally, like if the emergency, say, dictated that we should operate an airport and not a public works facility, we don't operate the public works facility and we operate the airport. And we have that sort of flexibility both within in the system and within our
You
operating.
can triage where
Yeah.
it goes, yeah. And then, I had a question also about the glare study. As I recall, when we did the solar array in Woody Creek, I remember reading that glare study because it is on final approach and it's like right there. And this is like much closer to that. And that glare study came from, I think it's like Los Alamos or Sandia Labs, like does the glare study and they have this, you know, extremely, obviously stringent, set of rules about the exact angle that sun hits those panels and what type of day. And they have a 365-day, you know, program that they put it through. So this is like 3 miles closer to the airport. I mean, from Woody Creek, we're like 2 or 3 miles, you know.
Yep.
We're like right on final. So is there any that whole study has to be, that's probably an extremely, you have no idea how that's gonna come out, right? That's what
I'll actually disagree with you because I've done the study for this site before.
Okay.
And we have the files in a previous P and Z resolution when we took the
Yeah.
existing solar panels.
right?
Public Works through location and extent.
Yeah.
There are things that, essentially because it is slightly offline, right? So it's off to the side, one. And two, we can do like low glare and do things like
Yeah.
that. But that being said, we have gone through it, so I don't have anxiety about it.
Great.
And we'll definitely do that, and we'll definitely do it before we do any additional installations. One thing too is that the airport is partner, and the airport director, Dan Bartholomew, has been an integral part of the team that has looked at this. And so these are a lot of the conversations that we've had here. I may have answered a little bit pointedly because of the fact that it's been litigated time and time again within our group too. I really appreciate a lot of these thoughtful questions though, because
Bonnie, do we have any members of the public?
We do not.
All right. Do we have any more commissioner comments or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So further discussion,
Further go, please.
I'm still a no vote based on the WOMP. I would encourage if it is going to pass, that the planning and zoning commission include 2 additional conditions of approval. One is NFPA 855 or similar if you find something better. But it answers the fire safety control plan questions. I looked at the table of contents, at least it's not. Yeah. And if there's something else, then go back to the chair with a modified resolution, but include NFPA 855 standard for the installation of stationary energy storage systems, which would be in lieu of a fire safety control plan and should cover that. And the second request, and again, whether this body passes or not, would be the plantings are fire resistant for the new screens, or whether that's on the inside or the outside of the prison control system, whatever you're calling the 7-foot high shingling fence. And sorry for further, so I would encourage the board to, and sorry, they're friendly amendments to your.
Yeah, we can modify the motion.
Resolution.
Amendments, yeah.
And my final comment professionally is that, again, I don't believe this is consistent with the law as currently drafted. So, and I'm not gonna sit here and litigate site selection, but, you know, I love the idea of DER, BCP, BESS, microgrids. But I don't believe you meet the conditions in law, right?
I would be willing to amend my second to include Jeffrey's recommendations.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah, I agree with Jeffrey that it should be modified the ways that he articulated, for the reasons he stated, and despite the fact that I do find this to be a very important thing that county needs, and I understand that there's limited amounts of locations for it to occur. But it has to be done right if you're going to do it, and, I'd like to see more constraints on use. I'm not sure that's possible in an entity like the county that can do what it wants, where it wants, but I wouldn't want to see these structures, especially if Holy Cross is operating it, turn into something other than a battery. That was my original concern in reading, is what's going in these. Because as technology changes, you can house other things inside there, like cell phone towers and other things. So anyway, I'd like to see usage, more specifically, spelled out in the resolution that it shall be for battery storage or BESS only.
And I would say that, well, I'm not familiar with the WAM. From my perspective, it's an appropriate spot based on the snow dump right there and all of those other uses. I understand that it's growth that continues the path down the valley and along the highway and everything, which I think is your concern. But with the snow depth actually farther down, and also we saw the picture of all the trucks that are being on firm and all that, it seems like it fits in there to me. I would agree with Chelsea though that it wants to be battery storage. You don't want a Bitcoin,
No crypto farming.
crypto farming or whatever.
Weird things happen.
And however, whatever batteries become, or whatever, it's some sort of a storage system, so storage facility, not a generation or not the other thing. So I think that's a good.
Yeah, and I agree with Doug. I mean, I think the site is appropriate for this. I drove by the snow mound today. I mean, when you showed the first picture with the drone, you can probably get that same photo from on top of the snow mound today from the past storm. I mean, the thing's like 40 feet high now, and so that is, and these are 50-foot connexes. I mean, it's just a Connex shipping container. And a 50-foot Connex next to a big snow dump, it doesn't seem out of place to me or, out of context with the lot holistically. Yep.
And, I'm sort of checking with the amendments. I heard Doug mention earlier something about, revising the fencing material. If that also needs to be
I think that-
incorporated.
Yeah, I think that there's probably, NEC or somebody's gonna say very specifically, or maybe, I think less institutional, as we drive by, the snow dump is a giant snow dump. The trucks that we saw in the drone picture, you don't really see from the yard because the berm was there. But a penitentiary fence around there is something that we're gonna see.
And there are other Holy Cross facilities that have fencing that is not very, prison-like, that we could, they've built other fences before that don't look like that, so I think they have.
There's
Examples
things
that they
around
use.
public works facilities
Yeah.
and things that are not as penitentiary feeling to me. And
So amendments, we're just trying to keep track. We have the fence. We have Chelsea's recommendation that this only be used for battery storage and that's it. And then Jeffrey,
Chelsea's concern is co-location. It would turn into something else. I think it's valid, and sorry, GR, the validity of that is we've seen it through the 5G rollout became you have 30 days to approve a co-location of a 5G service. So I can see where
Yeah.
we're looking, so the co-location of additional services would require approval, or there's no services beyond battery storage. The other two was that on page 6, that the plantings would be fire resistive for the screening. There's already something in there talking about 5 additional plants, something like that. So it's not a new, you can just update the existing. And the last one was explore or utilize NFPA 855.
And that talks about safety, of fire safety.
That literally looks for the fire safety control plan, and I can read off the table of contents if everyone needs it, but yeah.
And maybe let the OCC know that that's why we're drawing their attention to that 855 standard.
And again, this body's done similar when we did something, for example, for recreational vehicles, we refer back to NFPA standards, so it takes a little bit of burden and a heavy lift off of us and the building department.
So around the NF, was it the NFPA? I've been trying to dig. We do have A55. There's another standard that works for this as well, that we've talked to our supplier about. Your concerns are not too dissimilar to the boards themselves, as part of the conversations that we've had as staff with the Board of County Commissioners as well, over basically using lithium ion. And that's why we looked at that slide with all the different technologies as well, so.
It's interesting, this is a total digression, but this conversation never went there, because again, it's not WAMP related, it's no one's asked you what happens in 20 years when these things don't work anymore. We spent a lot of time with the 30 acres and 18,300 panels and where they would go. Would they end up with Kathy Hall at the end of it? So we didn't go there because it's not part of the WAMP. We don't.
And over a different set of circumstances, I'm more than willing to have the conversation because that's another thing that we've talked about on the project team, so.
Right, so we have a amended
I think you need
Motion.
to accept the friendly amendment. I guess.
I accept the 5 additional amendments, all right? We have a motion that Doug made and with the 5 additional amendments added and a second by Jasmine and Jeffrey.
So I'm a no, and I'm happy to give the reasons. Should
Okay.
call them a roll call.
I am, yeah. Go ahead. Do you want to give the reasons now or we'll do the vote and then after?
After's fine.
Okay. Chelsea?
I vote in favor of the motion with the 5 amendments.
I vote in favor of the motion with the additional amendments. And, Jeffrey, go ahead. All right.
You have 2 more people.
Oh,
If you're
yeah,
roll
sorry.
calling.
Yeah. Jasmine, go ahead.
I approve
Doug?
the resolution as amended.
Motion is amended.
Yeah. Perfect.
Resolution amended.
All right, there we go. Jeffrey, go ahead.
I would just say for the BOCC, they should read the WAMP. That the explicitly calls out this parcel should continue to function as a rural, undeveloped transition area, providing an important open view plane and visual break from dense development in the ABC area before the highway corridor narrows and Shelby Lost area. That's this review. It's a location extent. Thank you.
No, I don't disagree with all of the reasons.
It goes on to say,
Articulated.
it goes on to say an unobstructed visual buffer.
I think your points are really, really valid, Jeffrey, and I think the project's really, really interesting. And I just, funny how the code works, that we can't really do anything about how this process happens, other than say our 10 cents tonight and then hope that it's considered the next BSAC meeting.
All right, so the motion is passed, and then I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Yeah. Good. Second,
Second,
all right. Do we have any other comments or anything else that we need to address this evening?
I was just gonna say, I know I can't be here on the 13th, the 19th, so there's nothing on the agenda at this time, which is fine, but count me out if there is. Because I'm in the fashion show at the Belly Up on the 20th, and you should all get tickets and come see a very spicy theatrical fashion show.
So you're practicing the 19th, you're not inviting us to the rehearsal?
Dress rehearsal, yeah.
Is Brian in it?
The dress rehearsal, yeah, Brian Paul, the former Picken County guy.
This is on the 20th?
20th at the Belly Up, Brian, I took his pants off last year. Last time we did this. I took his underwear off, and he was wearing a skin thong. Skin colored thong. That's how well I know Brian now. So anyway, come to the special show on the 20th, but I can't come to the meeting. And it benefits Headquarters, which is a nonprofit organization in the Valley for mental health.
Awesome.
What is it benefit?
Headquarters is a nonprofit organization that supports mental health and resources for mental health crisis in the valley.
Thanks, everyone.
And with that, good night.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time, listening.
Only
Great comments.
Well, I mean, we have Joe scheduled for his interview. I think we usually try and wait until after we've gotten to that.
Oh, good, we got that stuff.